Before the Babylonian Empire became powerful, the Assyrian Empire ruled. This is mentioned in Ezekiel 31:1-6. In 625 BC, Media, Babylon, and Egypt rebelled against Assyria. The Assyrian king handled the Media revolt, while his general, Nabopolassar, was sent to control Babylon. Nabopolassar succeeded and was honored as the King of Babylon. He was Nebuchadnezzar's father. Assyria's power weakened, leading to another revolt in 612 BC, led by Nabopolassar. This time, Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, was destroyed, and the empire was divided. Media took the north, Babylon took the eastern lands, and Egypt controlled lands west of the Euphrates. The alliance between Babylon and Media was strengthened by Nebuchadnezzar's marriage to the Media king's daughter. Pharaoh Necho of Egypt joined the alliance against Assyria. When King Josiah of Judah tried to stop Necho at Megiddo, Josiah was killed. Necho, now in control of Judah, replaced Josiah's son Shallum with another son, Eliakim, renaming him Jehoiakim, and demanded taxes from Judah. In 607 BC, Nabopolassar made Nebuchadnezzar his co-ruler and sent him to fight Necho. In Jehoiakim's third year as king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem, taking valuable items and captives, including Daniel. Pharaoh Necho opposed Babylon's advance, and in Jehoiakim's fourth year, he tried to stop Nebuchadnezzar at Carchemish. Nebuchadnezzar defeated Necho, forcing him to retreat to Egypt and lose his lands west of the Euphrates. After Nineveh fell, Media and Lydia went to war, but were interrupted by a solar eclipse, which led to peace negotiations by Nabopolassar. The kings settled their differences, and Lydia's daughter married Media's prince, strengthening ties. Babylon became the leading power. In 604 BC, Nebuchadnezzar fully took over Babylon after his father died. Having defeated Egypt and gained territories, Nebuchadnezzar's rule was respected. His family connections with Media and Lydia further secured Babylon's dominance. In his first siege of Jerusalem in 607 BC, Nebuchadnezzar took temple items and chose young captives from Israel, including Daniel and his friends, to serve in Babylon. They were trained in Babylonian language and customs and found to be wise, even surpassing Babylon's magicians. The main events in Nebuchadnezzar's reign included besieging Jerusalem under different kings of Judah. The prophet Jeremiah warned Judah and its allies to submit to Babylon, but they resisted and were ultimately conquered. Jeremiah warned nations to serve Nebuchadnezzar, calling him God's chosen ruler. God would punish any kingdom refusing Babylon's rule, but those who obeyed would live peacefully in their lands. The same warning was given to Judah, but they ignored it, leading to the destruction of Jerusalem and the people's exile. Other nations also ignored God's warning and faced similar fates. God chose Israel to spread his message from their land, but they failed. As a result, he used their exile to spread his message through them in foreign lands. God's plan was to spread knowledge of himself, even through Israel's captors. By using Daniel in Babylon, God continued to reveal his message to all nations. Nebuchadnezzar, though powerful, did not yet know God. Through Daniel, God would reveal himself to Nebuchadnezzar, who could then influence all nations. Daniel and his friends impressed Nebuchadnezzar with their wisdom and connection to God, influencing Babylon's leaders. In 603 BC, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed of a mysterious vision he couldn't recall, causing him distress. His magicians couldn't interpret the dream without knowing its details, but Nebuchadnezzar demanded they reveal both the dream and its meaning. The king realized if they couldn't reveal the dream itself, any interpretation would be unreliable. The magicians admitted that only gods could know the dream. The magicians claimed no king had ever made such a request, and that gods didn't dwell with humans. thus exposing their limitations. The magicians' professions claimed they could reveal divine secrets, but they failed this test. Magicians claimed they could control superhuman beings. Astrologers interpreted stars. Sorcerers dealt with spirits. And Chaldeans kept records of divine knowledge. When the magicians admitted their limits, it showed their profession was false. Nebuchadnezzar, realizing he'd been misled, ordered all wise men to be killed. Daniel and his friends were included, so they prayed to God for help. God revealed the king's dream to Daniel, who then told Arioch, the king's guard, to stop the execution of the wise men. Arioch quickly informed the king. Daniel was brought to the king, stating that God revealed the dream's meaning to him. Daniel described the king's dream of a large statue with a golden head, silver chest, bronze belly, iron legs, and iron clay feet. A stone struck and shattered the statue, then grew into a mountain filling the earth. Daniel explained that the statue represented successive kingdoms, starting with Babylon as the golden head. Each kingdom would be weaker than the last, until God's eternal kingdom would replace them all. The king spoke to Daniel and said, "It is true that your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and the revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this secret." Then the king honored Daniel, giving him many great gifts, and appointing him as ruler over the entire province of Babylon, and as the chief over all the wise men of Babylon. At Daniel's request, the king also placed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in charge of the province's affairs, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. The first nation after Judah to be conquered and brought under the rule of King Nebuchadnezzar was the powerful city of Tyre. Situated at the entrance of the sea, Tyre was a major trading hub, connecting many nations and islands. It had never before submitted to any foreign power. Ironically, when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem, Tyre rejoiced, believing that the downfall of Jerusalem would bring more trade and wealth to her. Tyre declared, "Aha! The gateway of the nations is broken. It has turned to me, and now that she is destroyed, I will prosper." Because of this, the Lord sent a message of judgment against Tyre. This is what the Lord God says, "Behold, I will bring against Tyre Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the king of kings, from the north. He will come with horses, chariots, horsemen, and a great army. He will kill your people in the countryside with the sword, build siege works against you, raise a ramp, and lift a shield against you. He will bring battering engines against your walls and use axes to break down your towers. The dust from his horses will cover you, and your walls will shake from the noise of the chariots and horsemen when they enter your gates. He will trample your streets with the hooves of his horses, slaughter your people with the sword, and bring down your strongholds to the ground." Accordingly, in 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar launched a campaign against Syria, invaded Phoenicia, and laid siege to Tyre. The siege lasted 13 years, during which his forces persistently attacked the city. The intensity of the siege was so great that soldiers' helmets wore down their heads, and their shoulders were rubbed raw from handling battering rams. Eventually, the city fell. However, before Tyre was completely conquered, its inhabitants moved most of their valuable possessions to an island about half a mile from the mainland. When Nebuchadnezzar finally entered the city, he found little left to plunder. Enraged, he destroyed the entire city and killed those who remained. The following contract, drawn up and dated at Tyre, July 7, 557 BC, is additional indisputable evidence of the dominion of King Nebuchadnezzar over Tyre. On the 15th day of the month, Iyar, April-May, Milki-Idiri, governor of Kidis, will get 3 cows and their young, and will give them to Abla, son of Nadin-Aki, descendant of the priest of the sun god. If he cannot get them, Milki Idiri will give to Abla, son of Nadin Akhi, son of the priest of the sun god, 5 mana of silver. Witnessing Bunduti, son of Nabuukin, descendant of Nabutu. Musezib Marduk, son of Abla, descendant of the fishermen. Marduk Sakin Sumi, son of Marduk Edir, descendant of Edheru. And the scribe Piru, son of Sula. Tyre, month Tammuz, July, day 22nd, year 40th, 557 BC. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Tyre once taken, Nebuchadnezzar, before returning to Babylon, attacked the people of Idumea and Ammon, who had associated themselves with the last Jewish attempt at revolt, and compelled them to submit. He made also a campaign in Arabia, passed victoriously through Hejaz and Nejd, and penetrated as far as the Sabian kingdom of Yemen. These wars, predicted by the prophets, terminated the series of Chaldean conquests in Western Asia. The Lord noticed this disappointment and said, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, caused his army to serve a great service against Tyrus. Every head was made bald, and every shoulder was peeled. Yet had he no wages, nor his army, for Tyrus, for the service that he had served against it. Therefore thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I will give the land of Egypt unto Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he shall take her multitude, and take her spoil, and take her prey, and it shall be the wages for his army. I have given him the land of Egypt for his labor wherewith he served against it, because they wrought for me, saith the Lord God. When King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon captured Jerusalem in 588 BC, he told his commander, Nebuzaradan, to let Jeremiah go wherever he wanted. Jeremiah went to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, in Mizpah. Gedaliah was the governor of the land, and Nebuzaradan left some poor people there to take care of the vineyards and farms. Many Jews who had been living in other lands, like Moab, Ammon, and Edom, heard that there were still some people left in Judah under Gedaliah's leadership. So they returned and gathered a lot of wine and summer fruits. But soon, a man named Ishmael, who worked for the king of the Ammonites, killed Gedaliah. This made the people afraid that the Babylonians would blame them for the murder. Because of this fear, all the people left Judah and went to Egypt. The prophet Jeremiah warned them not to go, but they did not listen. In Tahpanhes, God spoke to Jeremiah and told him to take large stones and hide them in the clay near Pharaoh's palace. God said that Nebuchadnezzar would come to Egypt, set his throne on those stones, and conquer the land. When Nebuchadnezzar arrived, he would defeat the Egyptians and take many of them as captives. He would also destroy their temples and burn the images. Around 572 BC, Nebuchadnezzar took advantage of conflicts in Egypt and invaded the country. He marched from the northern city of Migdol to the southern city of Syene, destroying everything in his path. Many people were killed, and Egypt suffered for 40 years. After taking riches from Egypt, Nebuchadnezzar made a deal with Pharaoh Amasis, allowing him to rule Egypt as his subject. With this victory, Nebuchadnezzar's power was fully established. His empire stretched from Central Asia to the Mediterranean and Ethiopia. Even cities far away, like Carthage and Cadiz, recognized Babylon's rule after Tyre was conquered. During his reign, Nebuchadnezzar thought a lot about his kingdom and what would happen in the future. In a dream, God showed him a statue made of different metals. The head was gold, representing Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, but the body was made of silver, bronze, iron, and clay, showing that other, weaker kingdoms would come after his. Nebuchadnezzar did not like this message, so he made a huge golden statue and ordered everyone to worship it. He gathered all the important people in his kingdom and told them to bow to the statue when they heard music. Anyone who refused would be thrown into a fiery furnace. 3 Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to worship the statue. They told the king they would only serve their God. Nebuchadnezzar was furious and had the furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal. The 3 men were thrown in, but they were not harmed. The king was shocked when he saw a 4th figure in the fire who looked like a god. He called the men out and praised their God for saving them. This event showed Nebuchadnezzar that he had no power over people's faith. God had allowed him to rule nations, but not to control their worship. Later, Nebuchadnezzar had another dream about a great tree that was cut down. Daniel told him this meant he would lose his throne for a time, but would be restored once he recognized God's power. After a period of madness, Nebuchadnezzar was restored as king. He then declared to all nations that God was the true ruler of the world. Nebuchadnezzar was not just a wise ruler and a powerful conqueror, but also one of the greatest builders in history. More than anyone else, he made Babylon a great and famous city. Even in the Bible, Babylon is called the glory of kingdoms, the golden city, and the lady of kingdoms. His great buildings, the amazing hanging gardens, and the huge walls made Babylon a wonder of the world. The city was filled with treasures from his conquests, much like how Rome owed its greatness to Augustus. Nebuchadnezzar himself wrote about building Babylon's strong walls and fortresses. He used bitumen and bricks to strengthen the ditches and installed bronze gates. He widened the streets to make them more impressive. He also built strong fortresses near the Ishtar Gate and along the Euphrates River. The city was perfectly square, about 120 furlongs, 15 miles, on each side, making a total of 480 furlongs, 60 miles, around. A deep moat filled with water surrounded it. Behind the moat was a massive wall, about 350 feet high and 85 feet thick. There were 250 towers along the wall for defense. The top of the wall was so wide that a chariot with 4 horses could turn around easily. There were 100 gates in the outer wall, made of solid brass with iron bars for extra security. The Euphrates River flowed diagonally through the city, with strong walls on each side. These walls had 25 gates leading to streets inside the city. The riverbanks were lined with bricks, and there were docks with boats ready for travel. A 30-foot wide drawbridge connected the 2 sides of the city. At both ends of the bridge were the city's 2 grand palaces. Unlike modern cities, Babylon was not completely covered with buildings. It had gardens, orchards, and fields among the houses and temples. This meant that if enemies attacked, the people could grow enough food inside the walls and survive without fear. Nebuchadnezzar also built or rebuilt many cities, temples, canals, and aqueducts in other parts of his empire, making him one of history's greatest builders. His legacy was so great that his name was remembered like Nimrod, Solomon, and Alexander the Great. The Babylonian Empire lasted only 88 years, from 625 to 538 BC, but Nebuchadnezzar ruled for almost half that time. He was responsible for both its military power and its impressive architecture. Nebuchadnezzar died in Babylon in 561 BC, after ruling for 44 years. He was about 80 years old when he passed away, leaving behind a legacy of strength, wisdom, and magnificent construction.